We're learning the third Sicheh on Parshas Vayeitzei in Chelek Chof on page 136. The shir today is being learned Lila Nishmas Rabbi ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. B'shayches zu der Brache, was hat sich aufgetan in Mikne Lavan und Schus von Yaakov. In connection to the blessing that we see that came to the cattle of Lavan in the merit of Yaakov being with him. Welch is given sein Vayeitzei, which was the shepherd of his flock of sheep. Brengen sich in Zayar, so it's brought in Zayar, zwei days, there are two opinions, mit wiffel the Mikne Lavan is vergresset geworden. To what degree the cattle of Lavan was grew and became greater in size, in numbers. The erste day is, the first opinion is, as Lavan ashkach beginei de Yaakov, that Lavan found amongst his sheep, because of the schus, because of the merit of Yaakov, meya ana kol yarcha, 100 new animals every month, umeya imrin, 100 new sheep, umeya izin, and 100 new goats, yatir al ane, more than the cattle of what he had before. Und Rab Abba Omar, however, Rab Abba says, elef onin, ve'elef imrin, ve'elef izin, have a maisle Yaakov yatir b'chol yarcha. 1,000 times as much of the cattle, the animals, and the goats is what Yaakov brought him on a monthly basis. Und bringt der Reihe ledvarov, and Rab Abba brings a proof for his opinion. The fun was Yaakov had gesagt, from this that Yaakov says afterwards, Vayevarach Hashem oischal ragli, that Hashem blessed you because of my feet or my presence that I came here. Ubrechasa de le'ela, the blessing from above, lav iu pachis me'elef, is not less than 1,000. So if it's the bracha of Hashem, that's a bracha 1,000 times the amount of what he had earlier. Those are the two opinions that are quoted in Zayar. Whether it was 100 times as much, that was the amount of the blessing, or 1,000 times as much. As this move on, so it's understood as Eichlit and Ersten Man Damar, that even according to the first opinion, is es given Birchas Hashem. It's Hashem's blessing. This is mefurish because of, as it says clearly in the pasuk of Velach Hashtelzich, on which the Zayar stops and comes to explain this point here. As Lavan himself admitted and said, Vayevarcheni Hashem beglalich, that Hashem has blessed me because of you. So kedei nit zu vergressern sehr machlekes. So in order not to make this into an argument bigger than it actually is, Yeshleimar as das was halt, as the brachas given blois b'mispar meya. So we can say that the fact that, according to this opinion, the blessing is only in the number of 100 times as much and not 1,000 times as much, is nit weil halt nit von dem klal as berchasa de le'ela la via pachas melef. It's not because he's arguing on the point itself, whether a blessing from above is 1,000. The blessing of above, he agrees, is 1,000. Now, weil die brache von Eibishten can nimshach werden oif zwei erfahren. But when the blessing of Hashem is drawn down and is applied here in this world, so it can come down in one of two ways. Aleph, either it comes down, that even after it comes down from its source here below, is an irnikir begolui as is b'chasa de leila. You can clearly see what this is, that it has the same nature as it is in its source above. And that's when it comes with a great abundance, and even just simply and literally, in the number and the quantity of 1,000 times of what it was. Beis, but another way, the amshacha, or the blessing comes down in this world is, the amshacha v'yiridis habrachas von Eibishten lamato, vert anders in them, it comes down in this world and it changes in the sense, was lasato is nitkentik begoloi, that here below, when the blessing comes and is applied in this world, you can't see clearly and openly as he is b'chasa de leila b'chala taikif, with the great intensity as it is in its blessing above in the source. Zi is yated von elef, it comes down and therefore it gets minimized from 1,000 to mispar meya. When it's applied here in this world, according to the limitations of the place below where it's coming into, it is the number of 100. That's one way to explain the basis of this argument, that they're not arguing on the very point itself of what the nature of a blessing from above is, but the question is what happens when that blessing comes down here below. As a zabonit move on, but based on this explanation, it's still not understood. Wie bald as euch litten erster Mandam is das Gewen Birchas Hashem, since even according to the first opinion. This is Hashem's blessing, is my hechrich zu sagen, as he is nishtanig geworden. What's forcing us to say that when the blessing came down here in this world, that something happened that changes its nature from its source the way it is originally? And therefore, its quantity is minimized to only being 100 times of what it was before. Additionally, according to this explanation, we need to understand as follows. Aleph, the first question is, the fun was Rabbi bringt a chachel dvara from pasuk vayevarach Hashem oischol leragli. So Rabbi brings the source and the proof to his opinion from what the pasuk says, that this is the blessing of Hashem because of Yaakov's presence here. Und is sich nicht mistapet mit dem pasuk nichashti vayevacheni Hashem beglalich. He does not bring the pasuk where Lavan himself says that I sense that this is the blessing of Hashem because of you. Was wird schon gebracht frier bedeya aleph und es kaidem loy. And that bracha, that pasuk, is mentioned in the first opinion, and it's a pasuk that appears in the Torah first. Is mashma, so it seems, as dafke von dem zweiten pasuk, that it's specifically from this, the second pasuk that Rabbi Abba is quoting, is ahichache as es gewen berchase de leila. This is the proof that it's a blessing that comes from above from Hashem. Is nit move on, so this is not understood. Wie is from pasuk vayevacheni Hashem oischa mer hichache vi von vayevacheni Hashem. Why is that any more of a proof than the pasuk that is said and quoted earlier, vayevacheni Hashem, that Hashem has blessed me? So there's something unique here about the second pasuk that Rabbi Abba chooses to quote, different than the first pasuk that the first mandama says. Beis, another question here is, what is the tam hashinui? Why is there a difference in the way these two opinions are presented? Was beim ersten mandama steht, in the first opinion, the Zohar says, v'hava ashkach beginei de Yaakov meya, and he found amongst his animals because of Yaakov that now was 100 times as much. What's his madgish? So what's being highlighted here is V'Lavan had bakumen abrache beginei de Yaakov. What Lavan received, what it is that he found amongst his cattle, because of Yaakov, but it's focusing on what Lavan got. On the other hand, Rab Abba sagt, when Rab Abba says his opinion, what is he focusing on? Elaf have maisi le Yaakov. V'Yaakov had gebracht bracha. Here he's focusing on, he's highlighting the source of the bracha, that Yaakov brings the bracha of 1,000 to Lavan. Why is two different aspects of this being highlighted in each opinion? Seemingly they're only arguing about just the quantity, 1,000 versus 100. Nachmer, furthermore, oiv Rabbabe, will madgish sein, wie Yaakov had gebracht die bracha. If Rabbabe is trying to highlight the fact that Rab Yaakov is the one that Yaakov is the one that brings the bracha, hat gedacht bringen den pasuk shehuve bedeya ha'alef vayevacheni Hashem beglalich. So then the pasuk that he should quote that highlights that point, which was actually brought in the first opinion, would be the pasuk where it says that Hashem has blessed me because of you, pointing out that it's all because of Yaakov. Was is l'chayre mer madgish vi the bracha kommt von Yaakov. This emphasizes the point that this bracha is coming from Yaakov mer vidoloshen, more than the expression in the other pasuk that he actually quotes, vayevarach Hashem oischa leragli, that Hashem, Yaakov says, Hashem has blessed you because of the presence of me being here. That's only talking about his presence, but not actually talking about the blessing that Lavan receives because of Yaakov. So why does he again dafke quote this pasuk of vayevarach Hashem oischa leragli? So because of this, the Rabbi is going to give us a new understanding of what the basis of the two opinions are regarding the bracha, whether it was 100 times as much or 1,000 times as much. It's not just an argument on a detail of quantity or the detail of whether when the bracha comes down, it changes from its source above, but this is two different understandings, two different opinions in what this bracha here is. So we can say the point of this to explain this argument is as follows. Says Yedua, it's known as the Rinyu von Abracha B'chlal is. What is the concept of a blessing in general? As mizmevarach and mamshech ha'ashpa von zayin the mizbarach shayrish u'makar. The idea of a bracha is that there is in the source a source of a blessing, the source of this individual or this entity that's there in the higher spiritual worlds. And the idea of a bracha is to draw it down, to bring down what exists in the source to flow and come down here in this world below. This says what this means is as the bracha hat melchatchila ashayches zeim mitzat sharshay mekayra. The idea of a bracha is that this is something that's there in the source of where this person comes from, or where the spiritual source of this person, that bracha is there. Whatever blessing is going to come to him, it's related to him from his source. It's just that the blessing is the power to draw it down and to bring it to apply here below. And to use the expression that it says in the pasuk when Yaakov benches his children, Ish when he benches his children, he benches each one of them according to their nature, meaning that the bracha is bringing the blessing that's there related to them in their source, and he's drawing it down to them. So now here, this is applied here as well regarding the sheep or the cattle of Lavan. Und das ist der Teichen achillik zwischen die zwei Pirushim. This explains the content of what's the difference in these two interpretations or these two opinions, whether it's 1,000 times as much or 100 times as much. As Venzich mitzad vemend sheirische makir is die bracha nimshach geworden. What they're really arguing about here is it's from whose source above is this bracha here coming down to the animals or the cattle of Lavan. Leit nersten mandam, according to the first opinion, is das given a bracha zu welche Lavan is roi mitzad sharshai mekayre de Lavan. This is a bracha related to who Lavan is. The bracha that is drawing down from his source above to be blessed and applied to him below here. Who's the one that's instrumental in bringing down the bracha that is applied to Lavan, that is really his source that he has above, that it should come down here below in the merit of Yaakov? He brings this Lavan, this bracha to Lavan here below. And therefore, in this opinion, is the bracha given b'mispa meya. The blessing consists of 100 times as much. While the shleimus from Lavan, because the highest level of a bracha in the source of who Lavan is above, that he can reach, is verbunden blois mit mispa meya. It's connected only to this limitation of the number 100. Kedlekaman Sif Yud, as will be explained later in Sif Yud, what the number of 100 represents. However, Rabba's opinion here is, as the bracha had gebracht Yaakov by sein Kommen, that this is not Lavan's blessing. It's not the source of who Lavan is. Yaakov is bringing with himself his bracha to this location here, to Lavan. That's what leragli means. Bias ragli. The meaning of leragli, as Rashi says, is with the coming of my feet, with my coming here, he brought along with him a blessing. So it's in this pasuk where you see that it's the source of Yaakov, of who Yaakov is, that the blessing is based on. Erat ir gebracht zu Lavan, he brings his blessing to Lavan, aber sie ist Yaakov's ulefi madregasei. But this is a blessing that's Yaakov's blessing, and it's according to his level. It says, Nimshach geworden leYaakov von sein sheirische makir. This is drawn down and brought and applied here in this world from Yaakov's source above. Und hat die brache gebracht zu Lavan. And then since he's here by Lavan, and he's the shepherd of Lavan's sheep, he brings his blessing to the sheep of Lavan. Und the far is the bracha given b'mispar elef. And this is the significance of the fact that the number of the blessing is 1,000 times as much. Weil the shleimus von Yaakov is verbunden mit elef, because the level, the highest level that Yaakov reaches with his blessing is resembled or is hinted in the number 1,000. Kidl kaman sham, as will be explained there later in the Sikha in Sif Yud. So this, we have a new understanding of this, the two opinions here. They're arguing about this, where the source of the bracha is coming from Lavan's source or Yaakov's. Based on this, we understand what is being highlighted in the languages that are used when the Zaya presents both of these opinions. The first opinion is saying, Madgish, and is highlighting as Lavan Ashkach, what it is that Lavan finds here. Lavan hat gefunden sein bracha, focusing on Lavan because Lavan discovers and sees his blessing from his source. Now, the gefunden is beginning the Yaakov. The fact that it became available to him and it was applied here below was because of Yaakov being instrumental, because Yaakov was here and he was able to, with his merit, bring that down to Lavan. Und der Fahr bringt the pasuk was Lavan hat gesagt, and therefore, in this opinion, what pasuk is quoted? The pasuk that Lavan himself said, "Di chashti," that I sense, I have revealed here, that he discovers and sees himself as Vayeitzei Hashem, that this is my blessing, Hashem has blessed me. In other words, it's his blessing, it's the source of Lavan that he discovers. Now the sib is given biglolech. Who's the one that's instrumental and whose merit are you able to bring down the source of Lavan to be applied in the blessing here below? That's because of Yaakov. That's in the first opinion. Rabbi, on the other hand, when Rabbi says is that it's 1,000 times as much as Madgish, so what does he highlight as have a Maisi le Yaakov, that Yaakov brings the blessing here. This is not Lavan's blessing, this is Yaakov's blessing. The bracha is given brachas Yaakov on Eretz gebracht zu Lavan. and he brings his bracha to Lavan. Und der Pfarrer bringt den Pasuk, was Yaakov hat gesagt, and therefore the Pasuk that this opinion Rabbi quotes is the Pasuk that Yaakov himself said, Vayevarach Hashem oischa, that Hashem blesses you liragli, b'bias ragli, that when I come, I'm bringing you my bracha, that bracha should also be shared with and applied to you, to Lavan. And therefore the bracha is 1,000 times as much. That's the difference between these two brachas, and according to these two opinions. Now here the Rebbe will continue and explain us that the basis of this argument, which bracha Lavan received, the bracha based on his own source, or whether Yaakov's bracha was applied to Lavan, is actually a machlokes. It's an argument based on a much deeper idea and understanding the relationship between Lavan and Yaakov, and what kind of role Lavan plays in the Aveda of Yaakov in this world. And here the Rebbe will give us a lengthy introduction regarding Yidden and Goyim, lahavdil, in the world. What role do Goyim play in them assisting Yidden in serving Hashem in this world? And based on this, we'll understand how this applies here also to the bracha that Lavan received because of Yaakov being there by Lavan. So, klare zu verstehen den Minyan, to have a clear understanding in this subject. Darf man makdim sein, we first need to introduce and explain den bir in dem was rechushe shel Lavan is nisbarach b'schusa shel Yaakov. Let's understand better, what does this mean that the rechush, the properties or the possessions of Lavan, are blessed in the merit of Yaakov? This is not only in this case with Yaakov and Lavan, but this is so and by tzaddikim in general, as it says in the Medrash, Kol makom shetzaddikim holchem, in any place that tzaddikim are there and are present, bracha mishtaleches, a blessing will be applied, will be given in this place. So what is the reason for this? What's the basis of this concept that wherever tzaddikim are, there'll be a blessing? The Welt is vashafen geworden b'shvil ha-Torah b'shvil Yisrael. So the first fundamental idea is that we need to know and understand that the world is created for the sake of Torah and for the sake of Yidden, as Rashi says in the very first Rashi in Chumash. Und wie bald as das is matore von der Brie, and since this is the purpose of creation, is move on, so it's understood. As b'shas and yonei ha'olam zene mishamesh u'misayeya Yidden, that when matters in the world and any entity in the world is here to actually assist and help a Yid, as is alken and tom was darf ton, that a Yid should have the ability to do what he needs to. Ani nevreisi l'shamish es kaini. A Yid is created to serve his master, Hashem. Kumen zei tzuzer tachlis uvemele tzuzer shleimus. So anything in the world that's assisting a Yid comes to its fulfillment of its purpose and therefore to its ultimate completion of existence. And this is the time, this is the basis and the reason for what's called makim shat tzadikim holchem bracha mishtaleches, that wherever tzadikim are, so then that place where the tzaddik is becomes blessed. Because if there's a place where tzaddikim are being hosted there, and in this place they're able to serve their master, serving Hashem, is their makom v'inyanav misayeya to Yisrael v'Torah. So that means that this place and this location and the environment here is serving as hosting and is assisting the tzaddik and the Yidden and the Torah to serve Hashem. So it's not just simply because of the presence of the tzaddik, he has a great schus, so he brings blessing to this place. But it's actually because of the assistance that this place and the location, the people, are giving to the tzaddik. So therefore this place now comes to its ultimate fulfillment of its creation. And therefore it results in a blessing that if when the purpose of something is revealed and comes to its completion, so then the blessing of what this place really is revealed. The blessing, meaning its existence, the way it is above, in the real light of what this existence is supposed to be, is actually expressed here below, and therefore that's the blessing that we can see in this place. So now, based on this introduction, Yeshleima, we can say, as the tzvei deyes hanal in Zayar, that the two opinions in the Zayar, v'negei tzebrichas Lavan b'schus Yaakov, the blessing that Lavan got in the merit of Yaakov, whether it was Lavan's own blessing that Yaakov was instrumental in bringing down to him, or it was the bracha of Yaakov that was shared and applied to Lavan. This is based on the two different approaches in understanding how we view the existence of the world that exists for the sake of Yidden and for the sake of Torah. And as will be explained there in great length in most of the continuation of the Sikha here, that Rabbi will discuss on explaining this all the way till Sif Yud. We'll discuss this subject of understanding better what exactly is the place and the role that the world plays in assisting Yidden and Torah in fulfilling their purpose in creation. Okay, so the Rebbe, as an introduction to this point, begins with an example that will help us understand this. As es Farana Machloikis von Tanoim, there's an argument amongst Tanoim, Tzi Machshire Mitzvah Zeren Doiche Shabbos. When you have things that have to be done to prepare for a mitzvah, can that also push off Shabbos if it's a mitzvah that is allowed to be done on Shabbos? For example, the Machlekes there in the Gemara, it speaks about the mitzvah of Bris Milah, which is a mitzvah that can be done on Shabbos. But let's say the moil that has to do the mitzvah forgot to bring the knife or whatever other utensil he needs, or the hot water that has to be used for the baby for the mitzvah of bris milah. Are you allowed on Shabbos not only to do the actual bris itself, but also the machshire mitzvah, to prepare, to do something that is just a preparation? Could that be done on Shabbos as well? Then in Deiche Shabbos, does it push off Shabbos? Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is, as machshire mitzvah, zen and Deiche Shabbos, that even those preparations for the mitzvah will also push off Shabbos. But the halacha is, however, we don't rule like Rabbi Eliezer. The halacha, the final ruling is, vidideya, as is an nit Deiche Shabbos, that those preparations for the mitzvah will not push off Shabbos. Only the act of the mitzvah itself is what pushes off Shabbos. But the Hasbaras HaMachloikis is, what's the explanation of this argument? When you have a necessary preparation for a mitzvah, true, the act of the mitzvah is what the mitzvah is. But in order to be able to do the mitzvah, you must have certain things that are prepared for this. So now the question is whether those preparatory steps to come to the actual mitzvah, do they have a significance like the act of the mitzvah itself? Rabbi Eliezer's opinion is, as we balt mekanet tondi pu'ula under achana v'achshara, since the act of the mitzvah cannot be fulfilled without the necessary preparation, bakumti achana, then gather hachshivis from the pu'ula atzma. So even those preparatory steps has the same level of significance like the mitzvah itself, like the act of the mitzvah. Und dafar zene machshire mitzvah doiche Shabbos, punkt wie the mitzvah atzma. And therefore the preparation for the mitzvah will push off Shabbos just as the mitzvah itself does. However, the opinion of the other Tanoim is, as chotsh mimuzon kommen zu der achana, even though it's a necessary step to have these preparations for the mitzvah, wie bald aber, as sof is das nor a hachana, but since the fact is, it's not the very act of the mitzvah itself, it's a preparation for the mitzvah. Is init in geder achshivas fun de pola atzma. So it cannot be placed in the same category of significance as the act of the mitzvah itself. And therefore those preparations for the mitzvah will not push off Shabbos like the mitzvah itself. This is the argument regarding preparation for a mitzvah. Now, Afalpi has been against Tchiyah Shabbos is the halacha nitve Rabbi Eliezer. Here in this case, to push off Shabbos for the preparations of a mitzvah, we don't rule like Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. The preparations are not as significant as the act of the mitzvah itself. But even according to the final halacha, there are certain matters. Here we do say, as der machshe l'chayre shel mitzvah, that even something which is only seemingly just something that is just preparing for the ability to fulfill the mitzvah, bakum tichshivus shel mitzvah. Nevertheless, it rises to the level to be as significant as the act of the mitzvah itself. Where do we find such an example? And this is al pi halacha. Well, the dogma as an example, the divrei haran hayeduim. There's a well-known ran that says, as chotch an isha is nit mitzvah b'mitzvah spiri v'ribya. The woman is not obligated in the mitzvah of having children. That's a mitzvah that lies only on the man. Now, the man has to have the woman in order to fulfill this mitzvah. And together, the act of the man and the woman brings the birth of a child, and that's the fulfillment of the mitzvah. But it's only the man that has the mitzvah. But the Ran says about this, so what's the role of the Isha that's participating with her husband to bring a child into the world? Is she doing a mitzvah? Says the Ran, Mikol Makayim, however, Yesh lo mitzvah, mipnei shi misayas labal lekayim mitzvasai. She also has a mitzvah, as she is assisting her husband in the Maisa, the act of the mitzvah, in order to bring the child into the world. Although she's not obligated, but she also has a mitzvah. Now, when the Ran here says this, that the woman that's not obligated, but she's participating with her husband in bringing the child into the world, that she has a mitzvah as well, what is he saying by this? To explain what the Ran is saying, that she has a mitzvah as well, this can be explained in one of two ways. Aleph, either we can say what he means is, Yeshla mitzvah stam. She has a mitzvah, not this mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya, because that she's not obligated in. It's the husband that the act of the mitzvah relates to him, and therefore the part of the act that he does, that's the mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya. But for her, she has a mitzvah of assisting the husband in his mitzvah. So as being one that assists to a mitzvah, so what she does is also a mitzvah, but not this mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya. The part of the action that she does is not the mitzvah, it's not the obligation of the mitzvah, so we can't say that she has this mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya. What she does, her participation, does not fall in the category of having the actual mitzvah of giving birth to children. But another way to understand what the Ran is saying is, Vibaldi is misayas labal, sumekayim zay mitzvahs Peri V'Ribya, since she's assisting her husband in fulfilling this mitzvah of giving birth to children, is ir mitzvah begeder fun the mitzvah rabba from Peri V'Ribya. So when the Ran says that she has a mitzvah, in joining her husband in the participation of this mitzvah, she actually has a part in this mitzvah, which is referred to as a unique mitzvah, a great mitzvah, this mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya. She also has a part in this very mitzvah itself. So according to the second understanding that the Ran says that she has a part in the mitzvah, so here we see, even though she's only enabling her husband to fulfill his obligation, it's really his mitzvah, but the very fact that it's only possible to be done with her, and see she's making it possible, she gets a part in this mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya. So even though we don't paskin like Rabbi Eliezer, that preparations of a mitzvah which enable the fulfillment of a mitzvah are considered to be on the level like the mitzvah itself, and it's not Doiche Shabbos, but in this case, if we understand it on this way, it means that the woman that's helping her husband do the mitzvah, her part of the mitzvah does rise to the level of this great mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya. Why is there a distinction here? Why in this case would everybody agree that she does have a participation in this mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya? So to explain the difference between those things that you have to do to prepare to fulfill a mitzvah. Like the example I mentioned before, when you have a bris and you have to bring the knife or whatever else has to be prepared for the mitzvah. And there we paskin like the opinion of the Tanoim that it is not push of Shabbos. On their fall from the Sayeya by Isha, and the case where the woman is participating with her husband, where here she does have a part and her part is significant like this mitzvah itself, is moving b'pashtus. It's understood very simply what the difference here is. By machshiri mitzvah hanal, in the case of those preparatory steps for a mitzvah, zene de hechsher und die mitzvah zwei besondere polis. The preparing for the mitzvah and the act of the mitzvah itself are two different actions. There's the action of bringing a knife, and there's the action of the milah itself. And so it's two different actions, and also vet getan in besondere zmanim v'chulu, and it's done two different times, one before the other. The erste pole is take a hechrich. True, the first action, preparing for the mitzvah, is a necessary step. Aber not salib, the zweite pole. It's all for the sake of something else. So the fact is, this act is not an act of a mitzvah. It's a necessary act for the sake of something else, which is the act of the mitzvah. And this is the reason why that the action of the preparation cannot rise to the level and be defined as the act of the mitzvah itself. But in the case of the wife participating with the husband in the act of the mitzvah for giving birth to children, is the siyua from the isha, so the assistance of the wife, of the woman, in an oifen as verta chelek from mitzvah sabal. That over here, it's one act where she becomes part of the very mitzvah that the husband is obligated with. Says no, but the chiyuv of mitzvah is all about the obligation of the mitzvah lies on the husband, but the act of the mitzvah itself, there's no two different acts in two different time periods that are taking place. The mitzvah is the act that's done to bring the children in the world. That's the mitzvah. Whether children are born later, that's already the Eibishter's blessing. But the act of the mitzvah is with the husband and wife together, which is one act at the very same moment. And therefore here, when the wife is participating with the husband in that sense, she has a mitzvah, even though she's only assisting her husband in the mitzvah, but it's one act, and therefore her participation gets a significance being part of the very mitzvah of Peri V'Ribya itself. The riba bekommt the siyua from the isha, the chshivas mitzvah. So her part is also as significant as the part of the husband, which has the obligation of this mitzvah of piriviribya. Okay, this is all an example to explain and understand b'nigeya to the goyim and the existence of the world that also play a role in preparing and making it possible for Yidden to live in the world and fulfill Torah mitzvahs. Now, derech hachilek kanal zwischen hechsher v'siyua. Similar to this distinction here regarding the preparations for a mitzvah, or the case of where you have the woman that's actually participating in the act of the mitzvah itself. Sitzias is nar tafel, whether the preparation or the assistance is considered to be secondary. Other, or das bekommt am end von der chshivas von der ikke. It gets somewhat of a significance like the main act of the mitzvah itself. Is yesh mokim lachker. We could also analyze and think about it in these terms regarding b'nigeya debriya, regarding the existence of creation. Was ist beschaffen geworden b'shvil haTorah or b'shvil Yisrael, which is created for the sake of Torah and for the sake of Yidden. And here we can approach this from two angles. You can say as the bria is not hechsher v'tafel, that the world, the existence of the world is just here to prepare, and therefore in that sense it's secondary to the true existence and the true purpose of the world, which is for Torah and Yidden. And therefore nit begedach shivas and maila from Torah v'Yisrael. It doesn't fall at all into the same category of significance and level like Torah and Yidden. Other, or it can be said, Vibal Torah v'Yisrael muzen ankommen zu der bria. Since in order for Yidden to be in this world and to learn and fulfill Torah, they must have the existence of the creation. They are there to assist and even a partner in that sense in the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs in this world. Bakommt die bria am em chshivos von Torah v'Yisrael. So therefore, in that sense, viewing the world from this perspective, that its entire existence is here to enable the Yid to use the objects of the world to fulfill Torah mitzvahs, so that's really what the existence of the world consists of. To be there for the mitzvah, for the Torah, for Yidden. And therefore, the world itself gets somewhat of that same level of significance in its existence, like Torah and Yidden themselves. So wie Shleimas, das ist abhängig in der Öfen, wie man guckt auf der Bria. That these two approaches will depend on the perspective of how we view creation. If we will accept, or we sense, we experience the existence of the world as an entity for itself. Hashem creates it, and it's an existence. Not, and Yona is zu seiner Emzoi vehechshe b'shvil haTorah b'shvil Yisrael. But its existence, it does exist. Now, its existence is serving as a medium or to prepare for Torah and Yidden to serve Hashem. So then, if that's our perspective on the existence of the world, just looking at the very existence of the world itself, as you began with this premise, looking at the world as an existence, that existence in itself is an entity for itself, and it's not related to the existence of Torah and Yidden. And therefore, in that sense, it's secondary. It doesn't have that significance like Torah and Yidden. Al derech v'machshire mitzvah now, sivdalad, like in the example brought from the preparations for a mitzvah, for zenenit doiche Shabbos, that the act of those preparations are separate and therefore they don't push off Shabbos. V'bal ze zenenit ateil fun the pulas mitzvah. They're not part of the very act of the mitzvah itself. It's one act for the sake of another act, for the mitzvah. In this case as well, we look at the world and we view the world as something that exists, has an existence for itself, and this existence serves the existence of Torah and Yidden. So therefore, in that sense, the world is secondary and does not rise to the level of Torah and Yidden. But when you view creation from a deeper level, as ihr ganze Metzies besteht in dem, was sie is b'shvil haTorah b'shvil Yisrael, what does its entire existence consist of? The fact that it's here just to be serving Torah and Yidden to do a mitzvah, biz as the bria is kilo aprat from Torah v'Yisrael. In that sense, the existence of creation, it doesn't have its own existence in the first place. Its entire existence is just there to enable. It's just a detail of how Yidden and Torah are going to apply and fulfill what it is that they have to in their creation. So the world does not exist and then is utilized. It's not one thing serving another. It's just a detail of continuing what Yidden have to do in this world. Of Velashon Chazal, to use the expression of Chazal, Ir Metzias is l'shamsheni. Its entire existence is only this, to serve to serve a Yid. Kedei Yid zal mishamish zayin kaini, as kaini, and then a Yid should come and serve his master. Mesayeh zayin Yidin in avodas hatayra mitzvahs. It's a helper. It's an assistance. That's how we define its existence in the first place. The demold, if that's the case, the herzich in the bria gufe mailas hatayra v'Yisrael. So then you can sense and see and experience within creation itself to see it for what it truly is, being an assistance for Yidden. Therefore, in that sense, the world itself has somewhat of the same level like Torah and Yidden themselves, which are the purpose of creation. This view of seeing the world in this way is similar to what we explained before, as an isha hata chelik mitzvahs pirivirivya, that a woman that assists her husband in giving birth, so she has a portion in this mitzvah, in this unique mitzvah of giving birth to children. Vibal is misayas in polis mitzvah, because she is actually assisting in the act of the mitzvah itself. And therefore, if we define the world as well as a messiah, that's what the world is. It's just a helper. So that's what the very existence of the world itself is. And therefore, it also has a level of significance of existence like Torah and Yidden. These are the two approaches of how we view and understand what the existence of the world and the Goyim that exist in this world. Now, based on this, the Rebbe will give us a fascinating explanation to an argument between the Rambam and the Ravid. The mitkemen euch maß besein die Plukte zwischen dem Rambam und Ravid in dem Din von Shchitas Akum. We can explain an argument between the Rambam and the Ravid when it comes to slaughtering an animal. So, if the animal was slaughtered by a guy, what's the halacha? Now, before I read inside what the Rebbe says here, when it comes to the halacha of shchita, what we're usually familiar with is when you shecht, when you slaughter an animal, the point of this is that in order to enable the animal to be used to eat it. If the animal is not shechted properly according to halacha, so then it's called a nevela. It's a carcass which is not allowed to be eaten. The shchita is what's machshe, what prepares it properly that it should be able to be eaten. That's one point about shchita. But there's another halacha which is relevant regarding shchita, and that's really where the Rambam is discussing this in here in Hilchos Avos HaTumah. And that is that the halacha is a carcass of an animal is a nevela and it causes tumah. If you touch it, you become tameh. But if the animal was shechted properly, so then the meat, the carcass of the animal does not cause tumah. So now the question that the Rambam will be discussing over here is not the shchita in relation to eating, but the shchita of a guy in relation to now what is the status of this animal regarding whether it would cause tumah if you touch it. So the Rambam paskin, the Rambam rules, shchitas akum nevela umetame b'masa. That when a guy will shecht an animal, so then it's a carcass which causes tumah, and if you carry it or touch it, then you become tameh. Now the Rambam says about this, that this is medivrei seifrim. The fact that his shchita causes that this carcass now causes tumah, this is only a rabbinical thing. It's not biblical. It's medivrei seifrim, midrabanan. Sharei tumas avodah zarah vetumas takreivta midivreim. Because the fact that we find that anything that's avodah zarah or anything that is brought for avodah zarah causes tumah, that's only rabbinical. That's midivreim. So therefore, similar over here, when a guy shechts, the shchita of the guy, the fact that the carcass causes tumah is only midrabanan, but minat Torah that's not the case. So, and then now it goes on to explain that, of course, when a guy shechts, to use this shchita as something that would prepare the meat of this animal to be eaten for achila to eat, obviously the shchita of a guy is not going to make it possible to eat. That's not what we're discussing here. However, the question is, maybe when the guy shechts, the act of the shchita does have the ability that to consider the animal to be a slaughtered animal, that it would not cause tumah. Even if for eating, it's not a kosher shchita to be allowed to eat it, but nevertheless, not necessarily would it cause any tumah. So what the Rambam is actually saying over here is that the shchita of a guy, biblically, minat Torah, his shchita causes that it's a good shchita, it's not a carcass of an animal, and it does not cause tumah. The fact that we're saying that the halacha is that after a guy shechts, not only is it not fit for eating, but it also causes tumah, that's just rabbinic. That's midivrei seifrim, because it's the shchita of a guy which serves avodah zarah, and therefore midrabanan it'll be causing tumah. That's the Rambam's opinion on this. Now the Ravid is the Ruf Masik und sagt. The Ravid asks on this, and the Ravid argues and says as follows: Akum hu kebehem kebehemis. that in this sense we compare a guy to an animal. Ve'ein mitamin, ve'ein mitamin. A guy does not become tame. A guy does not cause tame. Am hadoim lechamayr. It's a nation similar to a donkey. Hein goyim. This is the goyim which are kamar midli, like a drop that comes out of a bucket. Ves kulam yisa ruach, and the wind could just carry and blow it away. And va'chayshe vaisam leklum. And therefore, if you give any significance to the existence of a guy, Asach, asaf, ruach b'chafnav. It's like you're gathering air, which is absolute nothingness, into your palms of your hands. You have nothing. So the Rabbi is attacking the Rambam very sharply here and saying that the fact that the Rambam says that the shechita of a guy is significant, and min ha'Torah, the shechita of a guy, would now consider this animal to be something that's not an avela regarding the halacha of tumah, is incorrect. When a guy shechts, it becomes an avela. It becomes a carcass which does cause tumah. We can't consider the shechita of the guy to be something that could take it out of its definition or of the category of being an avela. That's what the Rabbi says. Now, on a simple level, what it seems like the Rabbi is saying is that the act of the shechita of the guy, just like when the guy slaughters, he kills the animal, it does not make it fit for eating. He's causing it by his act to make it an avela regarding eating. So to regarding the halacha of tumah, the act of his slaughtering the animal causes it to become an avela. Whereas the Rambam says, no, we split this regarding eating. The act of the animal, the act of the guy slaughtering the animal will not be fit for eating. But as far as tumah is concerned, min ha'Torah, the act of the shechita of the guy will cause it to be an animal that was slaughtered and not an avela, and therefore it will not be makabel tumah, only midrabanan. But here now, the Rogachover, as Rabbi will quote, will give us a deeper understanding of what the Rabbi is saying, and therefore we'll also have a deeper understanding of what the Rambam is saying. Is Mefaya, the Rogachover, so the Rogachover explains, the Asagas HaRavid. What is the argument? Why is the Rabbi attacking the Rambam so much? And you see here in the words of what the Rabbi says, that we can see here the approach of what the Rogachover says, different than many other commentaries. When is shchita mekalkel macht far an avela? When is it possible to say that when one slaughters that, and he didn't slaughter properly, and there are many halachas regarding shchita, and if it wasn't slaughtered properly, that then it won't be a proper shchita, but rather macht far an avela, that will be that the animal is just a carcass which was not shechted properly. When can we say this? Dafke oib de shechit is a metzias teiranis al pi halacha. Only if the one that's slaughtering is an existence in the world of Torah. He's a true existence in the category of halacha. Then his shechita can either cause it to be properly shechted or cause it to become not properly shechted, and then it'll be an avela. It'll just be a carcass. But when it comes to a guy, none of these apply. Zen and ruach, they're just like ear, meaning they don't have a proper a category of existence. According to Torah, their action and their existence is insignificant. Heder, they're a lack of an existence. And therefore, the act of them slaughtering the animal in the world of Torah does not accomplish anything. And therefore, it's the act of the shechita of the guy that will not cause anything. It will not cause it to be shechted properly to be able to eat. And the act of the shechita of the guy is also not the cause of why this animal is now a carcass to cause tumah. The act of the shechita of the guy is nothingness. It cannot create any category of existence in the framework of halacha. Just like a category of an animal which is shachot, which is properly slaughtered, is a category of a halachic existence that it now has the definition of being a slaughtered animal fit to eat. The category of the halachic definition of being a nevela is also a Torah concept. This is not an animal that's shachot, it's an animal that's nevela. That halachic concept or existence cannot be caused by the act of the guy that's shechting it. So therefore, what is the Ravid really arguing here? What is the Ravid saying when he argues on the Rambam and says that when a guy shechts the animal will be an nevela? So the explanation of the Rogachover in the Ravid is as follows: Shchitus akom nevela. The fact that when a guy will shecht an animal, it's considered to be a carcass which causes tumah, is mitzadem was shchitus akom is nit ken shchita. It's not his act that's causing the creation of this definition or of this category that now it has the name nevela. That's his act is nothingness. Ubemele, but rather it's automatically is a son of nevela v'meisa me'elel. Here, when the animal is now dead after the guy shechts it, it's because now we consider it like an animal that just dropped dead on its own, and that's also in the category of being an avela. But it's not by the act of the guy. So the Rabbi says that there's no room to make any distinction between the shchita of a guy in relation to eating or the shchita of a guy in relation to the tumah that would be caused by this, because either way, the shchita of the guy is considered to be zero. It's not a halachic existence which could create any halachic status. And therefore, for both of them, we view the animal as an animal that just died on its own. So an animal that dies on its own is not fit for eating and will cause tumah as well. That's why the Ravid attacks the Rambam to this degree, because of his perspective of how he looks at the act of a guy. The Rambam sagt, whereas what's the view of the Rambam on this matter? As shchitus akom nevela umetamacholo midivrei seifrim. That the act of the slaughtering of the shchita of a guy does have a significance and existence in the halachic framework of Torah, and therefore even when a guy shechts, it could create a category of it being actually shachot, slaughtered. That biblically, minat Torah, it will not cause any tumah. And it's only midrabanan that it causes tumah. What's the basis of the Rambam's opinion? Val erhalt as an akum is a metzias al pi halacha. In the Rambam's opinion, the existence of a guy and the act that he does is an existence that is significant and exists in the framework in the world of halacha, where we are attributing a certain status, a halachic status to something. We can use the act of a guy to create a certain halachic status. Even in the world of Torah, there is an existence of a guy. And therefore, his shchita min ha-Torah will take the animal out of the category of being a live animal and becoming an animal that is shachot, that's slaughtered, and therefore will not cause any tumah. Now, based on what we said before regarding how we view the existence of the world and Goyim in general in relation to the true purpose of creation for the sake of Yidden and Torah, so we can say that the basis and the explanation for their argument is, according to the Raiva's opinion, true, the existence of Goyim is for the sake of Yidden, is es aber an Eufen as a bleiben an Inyan Tafel bakumenet kechshivas Teironis. The Goyim, if we view the world and Goyim as an existence, so in that sense, their existence is secondary, and their existence is in the true existence, in relation to the true existence of Torah and Yidden, are secondary, and even more so, really nothingness. And therefore, in the existence of Torah, where we are attributing a Torah status for an action that happens, the Goyim don't exist there in that sense. In the world of Torah, in the true purpose of creation, the true existence of creation, the existence of a guy, although he's there to assist a Yid, but if we view a guy as an existence for himself, it's for that reason in itself that he does not exist in the framework of the Torah existence. And therefore his shchita is absolutely nothing. It's like the animal died on its own. However, it's in the Rambam's opinion, the fact that creation and Goyim are here all for the sake to assist Yidden is that because we view them that they are a Messiah, that this is what their true existence is, to be here as an existence for Yidden. So therefore they also receive a level of existence within the framework of Torah. And therefore they and the actions that they do can also be defined as an existence that can be used to determine a certain status of something, to give it a Torah status of whether shechted or carcass. These Torah definitions and Torah statuses that we have here can be caused and created by the existence of a guy, which also has a significance of existence like Torah and Yidden, since the fact that they are a siyua, they're a support and an assistance for Yidden is who they really are. So they exist in the framework of Torah and Yidden. That's the basis of the explanation of the Rambam and the Ravid. Here the Rebbe will continue and take us to another Rambam and explain the Rambam's opinion regarding Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, the 7 mitzvahs that the b'nei Noach fulfill. Al pizeh yesh loymar. So based on this we could say, as the Rambam geht all the shitasai, that the Rambam here is also following his opinion, his approach, in the miyim fun, the Zayim mitzvahs b'nei Noach, regarding the 7 mitzvahs that b'nei Noach fulfill, where Zogdem Din, where the Rambam says as follows, as in klal von chsidei umay sa'elam, who enters into the category of being the pious ones amongst the nations of the world. it's only those goyim that fulfill the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach, but there's another condition here. Dafke b'pnei shetzivu behen HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Torah. They're fulfilling it with this purpose, because Hashem commanded to fulfill it in Torah, and Vaydiyanu al yedei Moshe Rabbeinu. And he notified us about these mitzvahs through Moshe Rabbeinu. It's not just enough that they're fulfilling these mitzvahs because of the sake of civility and the sake of humanity, but they're fulfilling it because of Torah and because of Moshe Rabbeinu. But if they're only doing it because these are actions and these are things that are necessary for the world to exist and so on, he does not get the category of being a ger teishav, which is on this level of being chassidei u'misaylam, and he's not on the level of chassidei u'misaylam, the pious ones amongst the nations of the world as well. Now this is something unique. This is the Rambam's opinion. The l'chayre is das tamua. So this additional condition here that the Rambam adds is difficult to understand. V'bald, since as we know, as Moshe Rabbeinu lehinchil haTorah v'mitzvahs ela liyisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu gives Torah and mitzvahs only for Yidden. Was for a shaychus hat matan Torah zu bnei Noach? What relation does the giving of the Torah have to the bnei Noach, to the goyim in the world? Bis zu sagen, to the point that we say, as noch matan Torah darfen sie mekayim sein, zere mitzvahs, darfen mipnei shetzivu ben HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Torah. That now after Hashem gives us Yidden the Torah, so even goyim as well, in order for them to fully fulfill the mitzvahs properly and be in the level of a ger teishav or from the pious ones amongst the nations of the world, they too should fulfill the mitzvahs because of Hashem giving the Torah at Matan Torah to Yidden. But where does the guy come into the inyan of Matan Torah, which they rejected, which they did not want to accept, and Eibusha gave it only for Yidden? So now, based on what we learned before, we could explain this. So the explanation for this here is as follows. Shengeret Kama Pamim was already explained many times. What is really the purpose of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach? As die Zayim mitzvahs b'nei Noach, zene nit an ihnen v'tachtas v'zich tzilib zich allein. The purpose and the point of these mitzvahs is not for the sake of the fulfillment of these mitzvahs themselves. They're not an end for themselves, that the goyim should fulfill these mitzvahs, and with this, they fulfill a purpose. Nor das is b'shvil Yisrael or b'shvil HaTorah. The fulfillment of the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach by all of humanity is for the sake of the purpose of creation for Yidden and Torah. Tzilibn kiyam HaTorah v'amitzvahs for Yidden. In order to be there now, to assist Yidden to be able to fulfill Torah mitzvahs. Kedei, as Yidden sollen kennen mekayim sein Torah mitzvahs, in order that Yidden should have the ability to fulfill Torah mitzvahs, darf die Welt sein in a matzav von l'sheves. The world has to be a civilized world, a world which is settled, where there's peace and where there's the ability of a Yid to do what he has to fulfill mitzvahs. Roi und muchshe for the avodah for Yidden. This makes it fitting and prepared for Yidden to do what they have to. Und das wird aufgetan durch die Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. And that's accomplished by the Goyim running a civil life based on the Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Velgestellt ein aseder von Yishuv Ha'olam, which gives us an order of a civilized world for the sake of Yidden. That's the whole point and purpose of Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. The same as we explained before regarding the existence of everything in the world, all objects and everything in nature and the Goyim. The same is with the point of the fulfillment of Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So now on the Riber, halt the Rambam, so therefore it's the Rambam's view, as darf mekayim sein, die Zayim mitzvahs, mipnei shetzivu ben HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Torah. It's not enough that they just fulfill these mitzvahs for themselves, but they also have to fulfill it because Hashem commanded these mitzvahs at Matan Torah. Just as we explained before, that it's the Rambam's opinion regarding the very existence of Goyim. As Vayeitzei Bria is Bishvil Yisrael, that since their entire creation is for the sake of Yidden, so therefore their existence is a significant existence in the framework of Torah, in the framework of Halacha, because the true view of who they are is this, that they are part of the plan and the existence and the siyua, the help for Torah, so therefore they do exist in the framework of Torah. This is also reflected also in how they are to fulfill their mitzvahs. Because their fulfilling of these 7 mitzvahs is for the sake of enabling Yidden to fulfill Torah, so therefore when they fulfill their mitzvahs, it should be done with the experience of this purpose. It should be done for this sake. For the sake of Yidden. So therefore in that sense, they are belonging to the Eibusha giving the Torah for Yidden, and they are included in this framework of the Eibusha giving the Torah for Yidden. Now here the Rebbe goes on to point out another detail in what the Rambam says regarding the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and to point out the correct and the exact, precise version in the words of the Rambam. Leitem bir b'divrei Rambam. Based on this explanation, the Rambam wird neu verstehen den Chelek zwischen die Girsais, wir sind da in Rambam ba'alacha zu. We'll also understand the various versions that there are in what the Rambam here says in this halacha. The Girsa Nafutza in Rambam is, the more widespread version of the Rambam is, that Aval im Osan, the Zayim mitzvahs, mipnei hechra adas, if a guy fulfills the 7 mitzvahs only because he seems to understand it himself, that for civility it makes sense to fulfill them, ein ze ger teishav, that cannot be defined as that guy which is the ger teishav. He cannot be defined either as one of the pious ones amongst the nations, and v'loi mechachmeim, and he's not from the wise ones amongst them either. So here in this version, it's v'loi mechachmeim. He's lacking wisdom as well. Aber in kamer Rishayim, however, in other Rishayim, v'chem bekisvei yad ateimanim, and also in the actual original writings that there are that came from Yemen, is the Gersa. So here there's another version of what the Rambam said. That the guy that fulfills the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, and he's only doing it because he sees it to be right, but he's not doing it because Hashem commanded in Torah. So that in this case, he's not Mechsidi Yom Ha'olam, he's not from the pious ones amongst the nations, Elo Mechachmeim. He's only from the wise ones amongst them, that he understands the value of peace and civility and so on. So here, there's sort of an argument in these two versions whether this guy is considered to be mechachmeim, from the wise ones amongst them, or not. Now, l'chayre, you look at this at first glance, is dafke the girsa nefutza nal tomua. Looking at the more widespread version of the Rambam as we have it, that's something that's difficult to understand. Why would we say as devos is mekayim dizayim mitzvahs mipnei hechra adas, a guy that fulfills the 7 mitzvahs because he understands the value of them logically, or understands it based on, in order the world to operate normally, civilly? Why would we say is nit mechachmeim? Why would we say that they're lacking wisdom? Could be they're lacking their connection to Yidden, to Torah, to mitzvahs. Therefore, you can't say that they get elevated to the level of being from the pious ones amongst Goyim. But why? In what sense are they lacking wisdom? Adarab, on the contrary, ze zene doch mitzvah sichliyes. All of the 7 mitzvahs for the Bnei Noach are mitzvahs that are based on logic, that are based on the existence of civility in the world. But based on what we explained before, Kem and Zogin, we can explain this as follows. As the Tzvei Girsayis in Rambam, the 2 versions here in the Rambam, Zen and Tzvei Fanim are really 2 approaches, wie we can learn in Shittas Rambam. How we would understand the opinion of the Rambam in the Shayches, was Olam HaKumen Tzatayra, and the relation that Goyim have to Torah. So as explained before, the Rambam has a unique opinion that because the existence of Goyim in the world is as an assistance to Yidden, this is who they really are in the first place, and therefore their existence is significant even within the framework of Torah. They rise to the level of having somewhat of the significance of a Torah existence. But this itself, though, this could be understood in 2 ways. If you accept the version that says that when a guy fulfills the Sheva mitzvahs, but he's not doing it because of Torah, so he is considered to be from the wise ones amongst them. So the point there is as follows. From Bnei Noach to Mekayim Zayin Sheva mitzvahs, Mipnei Shetziva Behen HaKadosh Baruch Hu B'Torah. We are demanding that a guy live up to his level of who he really is, being an assistance to Yidden, and therefore he should fulfill mitzvahs also with that feeling, with that connection, only because Hashem commands in Torah. Because the existence of Torah, which is the purpose of their creation, can nirgish werden, euch bei sei, it could be accepted and experienced even by them, because that is their true existence. So that's true. However, this point of them existing for the sake of Torah, is not als hechshe v'tafel. Their connection to Torah is only as being the ones that prepare and make it possible for Yidden to do Torah mitzvahs. Can der inyan Torah bei sei der Herd werden? No mitzat chassidus. They'll only sense and agree to the framework of Torah, to the purpose of Torah, as something which is out of bounds of their understanding. It's something which is pious, something which is higher than their understanding. This is not something that they can understand logically and can be explained within their own grasp and within their own existence. After all, the existence of a guy is an existence in the world which is completely a siyua for Yidden, but only a siyua, a hechsher. He's there to prepare. And therefore, in that sense, the very grasp of the guy itself will not be able to understand this concept that he's here for the sake of Yidden, for the sake of Torah. It's something that, since it's the true existence of a guy is able to relate to it and agree that this is what he's supposed to be doing and so on, but to understand it and to grasp it, that is not within the reach of a guy. So therefore, it cannot be demanded of a guy that their understanding, that their grasp should say and accept that I'm doing this as an assistance and within the framework of the true existence of the world, which is for Yidden. Hashem commanded for in Torah for Yidden. And therefore, is nit mekabel is a mechachmeim, and therefore even a guy that cannot accept this, he's still considered to be from the wise ones. Based on their existence, the way they understand things, Sheva mitzvahs b'nei noach in the world of a guy could only be understood in the framework of civility and the peace in the world. That's the Girsa, that's the version in the Rambam, which is based on the Yemenite Kisviyad and so on. However, according to the more widespread version in the Rambam, as im osam ipnei hechra das, when a guy fulfills his part by doing Sheva mitzvahs b'nei noach, but he's only doing it because it makes sense to him, is a loy mechachmeim. He's even lacking in his wisdom, in his level of understanding. So the reason here is, this goes a step further. As die ganze Metzies von b'nei noach is b'shvil ha'Torah, since the entire existence of a guy is all for the sake of Torah, darf der inyan ha-Torah euch durchdringen in die Chachma shalahem. So therefore this should even penetrate even in the way they view things, in their perspective, logically, in seichel. Oib nit, and if not, felt b'shas maise mitzias ha-Chachma. If not, they're lacking in what's really there in their ability, in their existence of their understanding. Because this is who a guy really is, and therefore it is within his capability to reach and understand this point as well. He's now lacking his vitality, his true existence in this area of his chachmeh that is in order to be there just for the sake of Yidden and for the sake of Torah. So therefore it's not only that he's not from the pious ones and he's not from the extraordinary goyim, but he's even missing in his basic grasp and understanding of who he truly is, that he's here for the sake of Yidden. Therefore, he's not even from the chachamim amongst goyim. Okay, now after this entire lengthy introduction here, explaining the position of Goyim in the world and the two approaches of understanding whether the Goyim and the existence of the world is an existence which then serves Yidden, serves Torah, and in that sense they are an entity that is secondary, or because they're created for Torah and Yidden, so therefore really in the first place, what is their existence? How do we define their existence in the first place? As a siyua, just as a assistance for Yidden. This explains the two opinions regarding the blessing that Lavan got and the merit of Yaakov. Und das ist euch der Bier in die zwei Deis in Zoya benegei de Brache bemikne Lavan beschusse shel Yaakov. This is the explanation of the two opinions in the Zoya regarding the blessing in the cattle of Lavan and the merit of Yaakov. So here the Rabbi explains this first, the difference in the numbers, the quantity of 100 or 1,000. The chiluk zwischen mispar meya und mispar elef is, the difference in these two numbers of 100 or 1,000 is as follows. Meya, which is esa pamim esa, 10 times 10, is the shleimus habracha v'haribui shemitzad hateva. This is the ultimate blessing and abundance that is within the framework of nature. Where do we find this regarding the number 100? We find this regarding different matters within the nature of the world. As der shleimus is b'mispar meya, that the completion and the highest level of creation is in the number 100. Uludugme, and as an example, where it says in the Mishnah that the person that reaches to the age of 100, he's came to his ultimate life. And therefore it's as if he's surpassed the existence of the world. After going beyond 100 is already above nature of the world. So the shleimus of life in this world is by the number of 100 years. Another example, the shleimus from Shein Pirkai, the example of nature of reviewing a subject and learning. The Gemara says a person reviews lefi tivay regilusa, according to the nature and habit of people, is meya pamim. The example that's chosen is 100 times. And so therefore we see 100 is within the limitations of creation is when you come to the ultimate completion of something. And there's additional examples as well. By contrast, the number 1,000, the number of 1,000 refers to a completion of something that surpasses nature. As is known as Elef, is Oisius Pele. The word Elef, which is 1,000, has the same letters as Pele, which means a wonder. Biz, and another point, and even furthermore, as menutz bekama mekaimis, the mispar elef bahash'ale oifaribi muflik chulu. In many places, the term 1,000 is only used as a borrowed term when you want to talk about something which is actually much more, when there's a great abundance. That's what the number 1,000 represents. As is mavua bekama mekaimis, it's explained in many places. As umas ha'olam mitzad atzmam hob nashayches nor tzoan hagativis. That what's the source of the existence of a guy? He only has the ability to tap into the source of creation, but all within the framework of nature. So as high as you go to the shayrish of the existence of a guy, it's all within nature. In other words, like the number of 100, which is the shleimus of nature. But Yidden, because of their very nature themselves, if nothing else interferes, are above the existence of the limitations of the world. And everything that happens with Yidden, the Eibishter is conducting and orchestrating matters with them in a miraculous way, which is above nature. The existence of Yidden in this world, the perseverance, the existence of Yidden throughout Golus with all the persecution is totally miraculous. It's the existence of Yidden which is above nature, which is the number of 1,000. Now we can understand what's really the depth of the two opinions quoted here in the Zayar. According to the first opinion, that Lavan only merited to the bracha of 100 times as much. The existence of Goyim is secondary, and they have no connection to the level that Yidden are on. Und der Fall is euch demolt, when sie führen durch seine Tafkid von L'Sham Sheni. And even then, when a guy is fulfilling his purpose of being there to enable a Yid to serve Hashem, und seine Messiah, the Yidden Bavedasam, they assist Yidden in serving, vet zu say nimshach, what blessing do they get? Nor the shleimus habracha wie sie is mitzad teva. Meya, they get the blessing that's only based on their source within nature, which is the shleimus of nature. The ultimate level of blessing is only in the number of 100. That's if you accept this view of the existence of Goyim in the world, B'shvil HaTorah, as being an existence, which then serves Torah. So since you're viewing them as an existence for themselves, so in that sense they're secondary. And therefore they get only a blessing only within their limitations of 100. But on the other hand, though, according to Rabbi Abba's opinion, is the ganze Metzias von Umas Ha'olam, B'shvil HaTorah, B'shvil Yisrael. What is really the entire existence of a guy? It's all for the sake of Torah and Yidden. That's how we define their existence in the first place. Or b'meila haben sie shayches zu my lassen shel Yisrael. And therefore, in that sense, they get elevated and included within the framework of Torah on the level of existence and the Maila of a Yid. And therefore, when they fulfill their purpose to assist the Yid, they receive and get elevated to somewhat of this level of significance of Yidden. So therefore, regarding a blessing, it's expressed in the number 1,000 that they're able to receive a blessing which is above the limitations of creation, which in this case, it's love on receiving the level of a blessing, Yaakov's blessing, the level of 1,000, which is the level of a Yid, which is elevating that even the guy, we should view and see the guy himself also belonging within this category of existence, somewhat like a Yid. That's this. So it's two completely different levels of a blessing. So we understand here how just a small difference in a number of 1,000 or 100 is really a huge difference in the way we understand and the way we define the existence of a guy that's here to serve a Yid and is serving Hashem, Torah mitzvahs. Now, the Rebbe concludes here based on everything we learned, in dem Yachas von Yidden, we have an important lesson and an understanding in how Yidden here and in our times relate to Goyim in this world. The Eibishter hat ausgestellt im Seder in Welt Azai. Hashem has created nature and has established things in such an order in the world that as Bisman HaGolus is the Matzah von Yidden abhängig in a gewisse Maß in the Matzah von Umas Ha'olam. That Yidden, in the times of exile, their condition and their well-being is to some extent dependent on the condition of the Goyim in the nations that they live. On their yachas to Yidden and their relation and their attitude towards Yidden. Ki b'shleima yeh lechem shalom. That if it's peace amongst the nations where Yidden are living, then Yidden will have peace as well. So in that sense, a Yid could look and say that he's dependent on what's happening amongst the nations that they live in. However, a Yid has to always remember, as durch dem was the Yid, as durch dem was the Yid helped im Areis und es mishamish dem Yiden, let me start again, sorry, as durch dem was der nit Yid helped im Areis und es mishamish dem Yiden, that it's by the fact that the non-Jew is there to assist and helps a Yid, is the Yid mit Geirim. What's actually happening here is, it's the Jew that's causing, as der nit Yid, soll in this Galben in sein Chayes, der Beshvil Yisrael, und soll this Barach werden. That it's really the other way around. It's the non-Jew that depends on the fact that he's assisting a Yid, that then really reveals the true existence of who the guy is that he's really created for this purpose, to be there to assist the Yid. Not the other way around, that a Yid is dependent on the well-being of the guy. So therefore a Yid should never feel in any way secondary, or you shouldn't feel in any way inferior and below the existence of a guy. In addition to the fact that the existence, like everything in the world, the existence of a non-Jew is just like a tool in Hashem's hands, that Hashem decides and does and things in the world exactly as he wishes. So the guy really has no control. So there's no truth at all to the view that a Yid should think to himself that it's the Goyim's decision and the government and so on that we live within or under that will decide the fate of a Yid. That's not true at all. But besides that, it's when the guy is assisting the Yid, it's the Yid that's the source of the blessing of the guy, when he's assisting him. That's the way we have to view this. Wie the Mittler Rebbe, Balagola, the Yud Kislev is Mevayer, as the Mittler Rebbe, which is the Balagola of Yud Kislev, which is usually in Parshas Vayeitzei, explains this, as Muzen, we can clearly see that B'chol Doyer, B'chol Zman, that in every generation and in every time period, She'uma, She'Yisrael, Tachton Begolos, that nation where Yidden are there, the majority of Klal Yisrael is living there in exile, Misnasas al Kol HaGoyim, they become the greatest of the nations in the world. They become the superpower of the world. And as we clearly saw this here in our generation now, in this generation, as Kalzman der Reuv Minyan Rabbi from Israel hat sich gefunden nor in jene Medina, that as long as the majority of Klal Yisrael lived in that country, referring to the Russia or in general the USSR in that time, is he given be'esnasus und hat matl ene given al kol ha'olam kula. So they were a superpower, and the fear of their existence was upon the entire world. But later now, when the Reuv Minyan from Am Yisrael get a river in Arzus Abris, when we see that the majority of Yidden are living in the United States, is the geworden die starkste Medina in the world. She became the superpower of the world. Was is bekoyach zum matl sein a massa upachad of kol ha'olam kulai, that all nations of the world fear the power of the superpower of America. When I feel like Medina, including on Russia and so on. Furthermore, another important point here, it's not only the Jew that's aware and knows this because he sees this in Torah, nor does the hert euch der mazole von dem eine Yehudi. But even the non-Jew, his mazel, the source of his existence, senses this and knows this truth. Bez as der mazal sagt, the mazel, the source of the life of the guy here in this world says, Vayevacheni Hashem beglalecha. Like Lavan said to Yaakov, that the blessing that I have is all in your merit. Ubemele is v'charad gedele nafla kol ami haaretz. Similar to the expression that the Gemara uses, mazalaya chazi, that a great fear will fall upon all goyim in the world when they understand that everything that they have in blessings and in peace is all because of the Yidden, and as much as they will assist Yidden. And if the guy is able to sense this, sagt euch he will say, and he will say this openly and publicly, that I can sense this, and the blessing that I have is all because of you, because of the Yidden. And he will demand, and he'll say clearly, tell me how I should reward you. The guy will stand and beg the Yid, I want to reward you for the blessing that I've received because of you. Either way, even if the guy here below does not sense this and is not announcing this, realizing his blessing comes from Yidden, but the mazel, the source of the guy, does sense this. And therefore, Goyim, will be there to assist Yidden with joy and with vitality. Like when one does something that he knows brings him blessing. Even kings will be there to help you and the ministers will be there also to raise your children and to be there to help you noch bisman hagalos, even still in the time of exile. And therefore Yidden will have all their needs in abundance, and are preparing for the time period when Hashem will transform all nations of the world to all call out in the name of Hashem and serve Hashem in unison, with the true and ultimate redemption al Yedei Mashiach Tzidkenu.